What does it mean to be a man? In this video, we're going to look at Sokka from Avatar the Last Airbender to help us answer that question.
They call me Sokka, that is, in the water tribe. I am not an oaf.
Before we dive in, let me get something out of the way. Sokka's character does dabble in some machismo and chauvinism,
Guys are better at hunting and fighting and stuff like that. It's just the natural order of things.
but I don't think these really define Sokka as a character. In fact, I think he's pretty much cured of it by about episode 4. He also tends to spend a lot of time worrying about his stomach, but I don't think that defines Sokka as a character either. I think that's more just for the comic effect. So let's look at some of the things that I do think define Sokka as a character. When we first meet Sokka, he's a teenager, probably about 15 years old, and trying to live up to what it means to be a man. His father left the village many years ago and left him in charge, so he's kind of the man of the house. His current idea of what it means to be a man include things like strength, bravery, leadership, ability to provide food, and prowess as a warrior. I think these traits are fine, but we see Sokka failing at them again and again through the first 2 seasons. So if that's our benchmark for manhood, Sokka's not a man.
It's your voice still cracks.
I'm the oldest and I'm a warrior, so I'm the leader.
So why then are we even trying to answer the question of what it means to be a man by looking at a teenager who's not even fulfilling his own definition of manhood? Let's table that question for a minute. Let's skip forward to the end of Season 2 when Sokka has a chance to reunite with his father, Hakoda, who he hasn't seen in over 2 years. The other men of the Southern Water Tribe look on as Sokka approaches the tent where he finds his father. At seeing his son, Hakoda stands, and the two embrace. I love this reunion. I think it's super sweet, and it's obvious that Sokka just wants to prove to his father that he's a man and make him proud. But before he ever even gets a chance to, prove himself in battle or hunting, this happens. A water tribesman runs up to Hakoda and tells him there's been some Fire Nation ships spotted. Hakoda tells Bato to finish uploading the mines, and the rest of you men prepare for battle. Sokka sits there a little uncertainly, even awkwardly, and finally squeaks out, what should I do, Dad? Hakoda responds, weren't you listening? I said the rest of you men prepare for battle. And of course Sokka beams as he runs off to join the other men. Isn't that a great scene? I think it's interesting that Hakoda is so quick to judge Sokka to be a man. He hasn't even been with him the past 2 years, and we the viewers have seen that he's not really doing a great job with the hunting and warrior skills. So what is it that Hakoda is using as a benchmark to judge Sokka? Let's jump back to Season 1 to see a flashback of Sokka's to the time when Hakoda left to go to war. Sokka waddles up carrying some supplies and announces, I'm coming with you. Hakoda replies, you're not old enough to go to war, Sokka, you know that. Sokka then imploringly declares, I'm strong, I'm brave, I can fight. Hakoda sets an arm on Sokka's shoulder and says, being a man is knowing where you're needed the most, and for you right now, that's here protecting your sister. Isn't that interesting how Hakoda skips over Sokka's declarations of strength, bravery, and ability to fight? Not that those are bad things, but Hakoda has a higher definition in mind, knowing where you're needed most. And if we use that as a benchmark for what it means to be a man, Sokka passes with flying colors all throughout the series. He comes through for Katara at the beginning of the first season, he comes through for Aang at the end of the first season, he comes through for the people of this village, and this village, and this village. You get the idea, and that's just the first season. At the end of Season 2, when he gives up the opportunity to go fight alongside his father, something that he's wanted more than anything, it's because he's needed elsewhere. I've actually skipped over my favorite scene of why I think Sokka deserves to be called a man, and I will show it to you, but first let me just say, I think it's an oversimplification to point to any single event as the thing that is the difference between boy and man. But if I had to just choose one thing, one piece of evidence to show why I think Sokka deserves the title, it would be this scene. In the episode with Jet, Sokka is out on a mission with Jet and the other freedom fighters. They hear someone approaching and Jet gives the signal for an ambush. But then Sokka realizes that it's just an old man and tries to call it off. But Jet goes in anyway. Jet immediately begins intimidating and harassing the old man, who begs mercy as he's knocked to the ground. Then Jet winds up to kick him while he's down, but Sokka catches Jet's foot just in time. Jet isn't too pleased about that and turns on Sokka. They argue back and forth for a moment, and it culminates with Sokka saying, "This doesn't feel right." Jet can't argue with that, but pushes past Sokka and walks off with the other freedom fighters. Some of you may be wondering why I chose this scene. In the end, he really didn't even help the old man, but it all comes down to when he said, "This doesn't feel right." I think that took a lot of courage, and it took a lot of self-security to stand up to one's peers and stand up for what you believe is right. I think the world would be a much better place if everyone could do that. I know full-grown men who haven't learned how to do that yet. So to recap from this video about Sokka, I think we have two good indicators of what it means to be a man. One, knowing where you're needed most, and two, standing up for what you know is right. So good job, Sokka. Thanks for helping us know what it means to be a man, and